But don't you think that there's also this element that certain governments are more concerned with these issues compared to others? And these systems are so disruptive that if one government develops one of them, it can give them an advantage, leading to the ones that are more cautious with these systems to fall slightly behind. So there's also a balancing act that needs to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, there's a lot of debate about this. And yeah, if I can name countries, I know that there's, for example, a lot of debate, for example, about China, which is a country that perhaps from the Western point of view, many people could argue that it's not democratic, or at least it doesn't follow the same principles of democracy as in Europe, or at least some, like especially like European Union countries. And there's a lot of debate if we should let them develop systems that they don't follow maybe the same ethical principles as systems in the EU follow. But I tend to disagree with this view, because I think that it's better to act responsibly, and to start doing things well from the beginning, instead of acting more as a reactive way, instead of waiting for the AI systems to behave in a way that it's not aligned with our principles, and then we have to go and fix them. I think it's better to act more as a way that, by principle, and by showing others that actually you can develop very good systems even within these ethical limitations.
And you say, when you say we don't have to act in a reactive way, I think mostly about the impacts of social media on society. That's very simple algorithms have had a very deep impact on our behavior, and it was because we weren't thinking of the negative impacts from the beginning, and suddenly realized after a number of years that they were very deeply impacting society with false information. AI has the capability to even boost that even further. So it is, I think, really important to have that from the beginning and to take that into consideration. But at the very same time, the issue with these bots and false information sources is that they come from countries that are not necessarily just China, but countries that have a tendency to try to disrupt other societies. So what measures can be taken, do you think, as an ethical standpoint from the countries that are trying to implement these systems in such a manner that are positive for society, to prevent those negative effects in their societies?
No, that's a good point, because of course, like, even that maybe you try your best from the beginning, it could still be that these issues happen, and many times it's not like also like developers themselves have maybe that they were conscious of this that they were having, for example, such biases. And of course, like, some things have to be repaired along the way, or as I was mentioning, this reactive way. But there's still like some principles that I believe that should be followed. I would say that, for example, like principles such as justice and fairness, that should be like one of the main things that we should think about. So it's like, to whom are these systems being developed to? Like, who is it going to benefit? Who is it going to be harmed? That should be something that should be very thoroughly designed and think through before, even in the first phases of development. Of course, the systems have to be also very technically robust and to be safe. And for example, that's something that could happen like quite easy, like some cyber attacks, for example, or maybe like data leakage. So it would be essential that we try to actually to make the systems very robust. I know that, for example, I think like it's Facebook and Google that they have something called red teams, right? That they work towards the security of those systems. And I would argue that that's also like very important, that they are like very thoroughly tested, and that should be also like continuously monitored, because of course new threats can come at any point. So they have to be continuously monitored and checked, and that is fulfilled. And then there is like, for example, I'm thinking of the other principles that many guidelines have, like, such as transparency, for example. that's something that I know it causes also some controversy, because there's many of these principles I'm outlining, like fairness, justice, technical robustness, all of that. Sometimes they can be a bit in tension. That's something that I've been focusing quite much in my PhD, what I call like ethical tensions or value tensions, which is that perhaps sometimes to be able to apply one principle, you have to maybe let go from another system a bit more. So, for example, there's a tension between being transparent, but at the same time with privacy, right? You want to protect, for example, in the case of healthcare, it's very important to protect patients' privacy, right? At least I know that in Sweden and in probably many EU countries, healthcare data is considered very sensitive data. So it's very important to be very diligent in how to safeguard the data, like to keep it stored in proper places. So privacy is like a fundamental value, but then there is also the issue of transparency. For example, like how do we make these systems in a way like transparent with the people that are creating the systems and the ones that are receiving the effects of that? How do we make it so that they understand that the systems, right, and that there's AI systems in place? What are the systems about? So there should be also like some kind of education also. That's something I really believe on, that we should really strengthen that for everyone to understand what is AI, what are AI systems, what are these different systems, what kind of impacts could they cause, and also what could citizens do. That's also something that I feel like that's currently lacking, right? I think many people, they feel like they are out of control, like they don't really know what systems are there, they don't know what they can do, if they can contest, if they can go against.